Happy podcasting day, everybody. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Chillo, chillo.
Ooh.
Guess who's back?
Back again. Podcast
Seahawks
back. Bring your friends. Gentlemen, great day to podcast, especially after a win in the way they won, how they played. They're obviously not perfect. No, they're still a flawed team, but that was a fun game to watch. That game felt like the Atlanta game, except they won. That's I think pretty fair to say.
Exactly.
I mean, defensive showcase. How not to do it.
Yes, if you're going to run a clinic on defense, you say, this is a Seattle Seahawks defense. Do not play like them. Whatever they do, we're doing the opposite.
This is how you don't contain the run. This is how you don't tackle.
This is how
you don't set up a zone defense.
This is how you not allow a tight end to run for 81 yards.
This is how you don't plan a scheme for the personnel. Yeah. Yes. It's a clinic.
All that aside, it was a very exciting game. There was a lot to be excited about, a lot to be concerned about, but I would say overall, there are more positive than negatives coming out of that game. And it wasn't just because they won. I would say it's how they won. And a lot of it had to do with the offense. That was the first time I think we've really seen our offense look not only balanced, but it looked like a competent, focused, and very, very efficient offense.
I was going to say, the most excited person after the game was not Pete Carroll, and it wasn't Geno Smith. Do you know who it was? It was Shane Waldron. Because for the first time ever, his offense, this week, ran like he draws it up. Like he was brought in, like kind of handpicked, but he didn't actually get to run his offense because Russell Wilson doesn't. This isn't really a shot, just because Russell Wilson's successful. It is, but this is the first time his offense was like run like an offense. Like there was concepts and it was run as it's meant to be run. And so I thought like Shane must be stoked, like to actually see like what he draws up could actually work if he actually like do it. I felt kind of happy for the dude. I was wondering if like Samuel was going to give him a break this week.
I have lots of thoughts about Shane Waldron, but we'll save that once we get into our topics. Zeb, what did you think of that game? Like, obviously you had positive things to say. Please share.
Well, I mean, obviously our defense is still looking not good.
I like how we all like are trying to like be polite of how bad the defense is.
Yeah, I mean,
well, I can say that the defense won the game because they had their pick six, and without the pick six, we were behind on points. So, defense won the game for us.
That's fair.
There you go.
At least on that play. But the Lions' defense obviously is as bad as ours is. So, the thing that impressed me most was just the way that they were able to take advantage of that and run probably one of the most efficient offensive games we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, just to kind of put some numbers to it, Geno won NFC Offensive Player of the Week. Rashad Penny won the FedEx Ground Player of the Week. Michael Dixon did not punt, so it's the first time in Seahawk history that they did not punt at all. They were 9 for 12 on third down. The only drive that didn't end in them scoring was a missed field goal that, on replay, it looks like the Lions just did a really good job, and that caused a bad snap, caused a rush kick, and that was the only time that their offense really, like, failed them. And it wasn't... Everything else was just, like, they did almost everything they wanted. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah, the other thing, what was that? There was one more stat. Well, I think this is the first game where the Seahawks have scored 10 or more points in each quarter.
Yeah.
Ever.
It was the first time they scored second half offensive touchdowns too.
this season. Yeah,
Yeah, well, this season, yeah.
Yeah, so it's
but
a short season, but I mean, I know that's something that we've talked about. That's concerns that other fans have had as well. That the fact that you can't score more than your one field goal and a blocked punt for a touchdown, like they were really, really hurting for second half points. And in this game, it just was. I was concerned about that initially. I was concerned like, I'm worried that even though we've got this really good lead, we might not be able to hold it because our offense won't be able to carry it into the second half.
and our defense gave up how many points in the fourth quarter?
So
22.
we held the Lions to 15 points in the first half. They ended up with 43 points. Is that
45.
right? 45?
45.
So they scored another 30 points in the second half. Obviously, they converted a lot of fourth downs. They were 3 for 3 on fourth down. They converted two 2-point conversions. So credit to the Lions for taking advantage of our bad defense. But the Seahawks, they responded quite well. And I think that's what I found to be most impressive. And like you said, Russ, that is a credit to the game that Shane Waldron called and the game that the Seahawks actually executed.
It was impressive. It was really impressive. I mean, Geno Smith is the NFC Offensive Player of the Week this week.
He has
Now-
more NFC Offensive Players of the Week than Russell Wilson does. And obviously he would have AFC Offensive Player of the Week, but that's still one more than Russ. And
I mean, considering everything that was being said about Geno, including by me, that's pretty incredible. Like they were they were listing our quarterbacks as like 34th and 36th best in the league, and there's only 32 teams.
yeah.
But Geno, wow, we're gonna have to talk about him today.
Well, that's great because the Seahawks continue their roadshow as they head to New Orleans to face the 1-3 Saints, who are in the midst of a potential quarterback controversy. Geno played this team last year, the Saints, and was not able to close it out as they lost 10-13. But the reigning NFC Offensive Player of the Week, can he continue to shine? The Seahawks play another round of horrid defense, but it was still enough to close out that win, like Zeb said, that pick 6 for a touchdown. Credit to Tariq Woolen. This is a Hawkscast.net podcast brought to you by the Hawkscast Forum. Find us on Twitter at Seahawks Podcast, Seahawks Forum. And Zeb, I'm going to kick it off to you. I want to know, topic number 1, is Geno Smith the truth?
I think Geno is very good at a few things. I think he's matured a lot. I think that when he's put, I mean, this isn't new stuff. When he's put in a position to win, he can be very successful. He's clearly very efficient. He's definitely shown in this last game in particular his ability to read the defense and make changes at the line. Not afraid to check into a run or change the play up. You know what I mean? I think the way he checked into some of those penny runs was just, you just rarely saw Russell do something like that.
Did you hear the comment that Penny said?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, was that legit or was that fake? I thought I saw that.
Is it fake? Because it would have been great if it was real, but I think it was fake. Now that I think about it.
Oh, what was it? What was the fake quote?
Something about that it's good to have a quarterback not messing with the plays or something like that.
It might be a fake quote, but it's a real thing.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, that's just it. If this defense was better, like even marginally better, say 20 to 30% better, if we had, maybe having our starting corners and our starting safeties all in there, maybe, who knows? But Geno is playing so efficiently and he's got the tools around him. We have weapons. We could be winning lots of games. As it stands, I'm afraid that we're still going to be at moments asking him to do too much, and that's when his weaknesses show. If we could let him play the way he played this last weekend in every game, we've got a shot to do something.
How do you think? So Pete Carroll has been saying Geno is the answer. He's been saying Geno's the truth. He's been saying that before he got re-signed. They said that as he got re-signed, they said that once they traded away Russ, once they acquired Drew Lock in preseason, in training camp, before the season started, Pete has been saying Geno is the guy. Geno is doing amazing things. And in the first 3 weeks, everyone was saying, like, Pete, what are you talking about? And then this game happens. What does that say about Pete Carroll and not only his belief in Geno Smith, but the fact that Geno backed it up? Like, there has to be a certain segment of fans out there that this like caught them off guard. They had to have thought that this was an improbable task given to Geno Smith. No?
Yeah, I mean, you heard from the Twitter sphere or the whatever, the fan base was very divided on how they felt about Geno.
We could go back to like a podcast or two with Papa Zeb, who I believe he said he wanted to see Drew Lock just because it can't be worse.
Well, you know, there's I've been talking to my brother about this in particular. Like, there's the idea that Drew Lock's kind of more of a gunslinger, and that the games might be a bit more fun with him out there. Not that we have any more. I don't think he gives us a better chance to win by any means. But it's like, if we're going to lose 10 to 14 games this season or whatever, like, at least make it entertaining. But, you know, Geno played out of his mind on Sunday, and even better than just the efficiency, he made plays when he needed to make plays. And Pete, obviously, you know, Pete's like that super supportive friend where they're going to back you up no matter what, and they're going to tell you the things that they think are going to help you get to where you need to be. And that's Pete. And when he decided that Geno was the guy, he's going to sell it as hard as he can sell it, and that's what he did. And you know, maybe there's more to it. Maybe Matty F. Brown is right. Maybe the film he watched, all that film that he studied over the offseason is maybe his conclusions are correct. Maybe Geno is the guy.
Shout out to Matty and his podcast, The Seahawks Overload. Ross, I'm going to ask you this question, but I'm going to add a extra question on top of it. First, is Geno the truth? And did Pete treat this situation very much like what was written in the book Moneyball and in the movie, where Ron Washington, the first base coach for the Oakland A's, is basically pumping up Scott Hatterberg, who has never played first base, and says, like, yeah, you can't play catcher because your knees are shot, but we're going to try you at first base because you get on base. And it's like, the book and the movie, they talk about how he's just constantly, like, pumping him up, saying, you got this, you're so good at this, you got this, when in fact it took a lot of work to get him there. Is that the case with Geno, where Pete has been saying, oh, I gotta pump him up, I gotta get him ready, I gotta get him in that positive mindset? Or is this current version of Geno someone that's always been there, and this is like only been his first chance to get it? Because Pete has said, we're gonna open the playbook, we're gonna make it better, we're gonna open up, give Geno more opportunity. Is that what happened?
It's a very complicated and long. Dude, don't give me an excuse to talk long.
Well, I'm going to start the timer and go.
It's difficult. I mean, obviously, this hasn't always been there. Clearly. I mean, early in his career when Geno was playing, he wasn't a 75, 80% passer completion rate. He was under 50%. And he wasn't a, you know, I mean, right now, technically, he's a 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, but it's kind of a misnomer because one of the 10 interceptions was that wasn't him. He was like a 1.5-to-1 guy. So, and we've seen this. This isn't like unheard of. I don't think it's enough quarterbacks are given enough opportunity. Back in the 70s and 80s, let me get in my old man mode. This was a little bit more common. You got to see, like, quarterback is such a difficult position to play that sometimes people sit on the bench for years, and when they finally get back in the game, they're better. There are concrete examples you can give. I mean, even like Jim Plunkett and things. And the Raiders kind of specialize in these reclamation projects. So at some point, the light has clearly come on a bit for him. But also, like Zeb said, there are certain things he can do. I don't know if he's the absolute truth, but to borrow something from Stephen Colbert, he's truthy. He's truthy. There's certain things about him, but we're still not asking him to do certain things, and maybe we don't need to. Maybe since he can fit in the system and run the offense, we're not going to be situations where we have to ask him to do too much. And let's not forget that early, just a week and a half ago, when we did ask him, hey, we need one touchdown to win the game, end of the game, and he took a sack and then he turned it over. I mean, like this, let's not go overboard on the one game that went right. Now, he's become an efficient quarterback. He's become careful with the ball. He may have better wheels at this point in his career than Russell Wilson, I gotta say.
Yeah.
And he's actually willing to use them now, so cool. So there are certain things he does really, really, really well. And we can hide, hopefully, his shortcomings, which, sorry, they're still there. He's not still, there's nothing to indicate that he's best under pressure. Nothing at all. There's nothing to indicate that he's going to suddenly have a great deep ball. There's nothing to indicate that he's always going to be able to see the right blitzer. He did diagnose some simple blitzes against the Lions, but I almost feel like that was on the Lions. Like you know what? Like
it was like so obvious. It's like you sent everyone up the line. There's no secondary help. And
it was
was like, hey, Penny, let's just. I'm going to hand you the ball. Let's just run it past everybody.
I really thought it was like a shot at Geno. I thought they felt that because he hasn't handled pressure up to this point, that they thought that they threw everything at the line, that he would get nervous and make a mistake. But that's not the kind of folding he does. He does the folding when it's the game situation where it's too big for him sometimes, maybe. God, I feel like a dick saying that, sorry. But, I don't know if he's the absolute truth, but there's some truthiness to him, and if you run the right system and don't ask him to do things he's not equipped to do, that's what he's going to do. Is it a money ball kind of pump him up situation? I mean, that's what Pete Carroll does, right? That part of the game. I mean, I don't think I was wrong. I think he wanted Drew Lock to step up and win the job, but once it was obvious he wasn't going to, then you're all in with Geno, and he's, like you said, he's always going to back his guy.
Yeah.
And he's going to borrow the Russell Wilson. Hey, man. Hey, Geno, why not you? Why not you, Geno?
Wouldn't that be hilarious if Pete Carroll is just, like, giving Geno all the Russ, all the Russ sayings, like, there's a king in every room. Why not you? Like, that's how he coaches him, and it's, like, totally genuine, totally sincere. Be hilarious.
I mean, it is. I mean, it's ironic. It's funny, but it's also true. I mean, I've, as it's kind of become obvious, I've kind of been turned off Ross. Jesus, that's myself. God damn it. There's some radio shit going on there. I've been turned off of Russ for the last couple of years as well, but it's no secret. I have borrowed thoroughly from Pete Carroll and a bit from Russ in my own management. And I'm still using his "Why not you" speeches. So, I mean, it's effective. It's right. It's proper. It's a proper mindset for people. And when you want them, when people are ready to elevate but haven't elevated themselves, that's exactly the mentality that they should go in with. Why not you? The only thing holding you back is you. And now, after in Geno's case, drafted so high, but then never given a chance. It wouldn't be a surprise if after 7 years on the bench, he had lost a little bit of confidence. If he hadn't, he always claimed it wasn't, but how can you not be affected by 7 years on the bench? And you just kind of think that's your fate. I'm going to collect a couple $1 million a year to hold a clipboard and be a cheerleader. Whatever they needed to do to get him pumped up, put him in a position to win, and that's the most important thing. You don't have to do that with Russ. That's the thing. That's the biggest difference. Geno is a great caretaker. I don't think he forces the action much. And Russell Wilson, when he's out there, when he's being dynamic, Russ, That's his advantage. He's got the tools and the mentality to force the action on the defense, to really do unorthodox things, to really push things downfield. And Geno's not going to do that. But if Geno just runs the system and runs it well, and if Shane, talk about why not you? Why not you, Shane? You were brought in, didn't really get a chance to do it because of the quarterback you had. But why not you, Shane? Shane, now is your chance. You got a guy who's just going to run your offense. That's all he's going to do. So this is the chance for everybody to shine. And so far, they're responding well. We'll see how far it takes them.
Geno Smith is going to make about $3.5 million this year. That is what his contract.
That's only $40 million less than Russ.
Pretty close.
It's amazing to think that the Seahawks are 2-2 in a tough NFC West. You know, obviously we've lost to the Niners already. Yeah. Is Geno the truth? He's truthy enough. He's not the answer long term because we have seen his limitations. Like I point back to the 2 games last year where the game was tied. He had an opportunity, and you could say it's not 100% on Geno because his offensive line is still patchy. And even in that Falcons game, it was a bad penalty that took down a first down. They would have been like in the red zone, I believe, if not for that bad penalty. And then the center basically just lost his guy, and Geno just got sacked immediately. So we can say Geno don't take that sack, but he's also got like half a second before a guy is like in his face and is like got him down to the ground. So I do give him a little bit of grace in that sense. But this version of Geno is not the Geno we saw in New York. You can just look at just quarterback rating, which is not a perfect stat. But in the 4 years and 33 games that Geno played with the Jets, his quarterback rating was 72.4, which is fine. Like, that's great for maybe a backup, a guy who's getting some spot play. His quarterback rating in Seattle across the 9 games he's played, 7 that he started, it's 105.7. The quarterback rating he had in that Lions game was 132.6. He was probably like 1 touchdown away from having a perfect quarterback rating because 23 for 30, 320 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, no sacks. He ran it 7 times for 49 yards and a rushing touchdown. I'm not really sure what else Geno Smith could have done offensively in that game. Like, had they lost because the defense just gave up too many points, it would not have been on Geno Smith. The way that he played in that particular game, whether or not that's sustainable, I believe all of us are in agreement that it is not sustainable. We do not expect this is going to happen because that Lions defense is really bad. Like, there are a lot of things that they did poorly. I think you also have to give credit to Shane Waldron, and I'm one of his biggest detractors. I've never been impressed with him, but in this particular game, everything worked. So credit to Shane, credit to the offensive line, credit to the players. All the players did an amazing job. Like, I can't think of any particular time on the offense where I was like, really, oh man, we should have had that. That would have changed the game. They recovered. Ross has one. Ross has one locked and loaded. So what did I forget?
It was just one. It wasn't a big deal in the big scheme of things, but because I just want to bring it up because we were bringing up like Geno calling audibles that were effective. He audibled into a run play up the middle when the Lions had a run blitz on in the middle. It was so bad. I think I texted you guys at the time. Like, I watched it happen. I'm going like, I'm pretty sure he's audibling to a run. That's a run blitz. Like, they're not trying to. And sure enough, he like straight into like Penny runs it like 8 guys.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm nitpicking obviously, but it was just like holy crap.
Yeah,
I watched it happen in slow motion.
And I think the fact that you obviously remember that means something. But we could, like, all of us can counter with say, like, well, here's another play that worked really well. Like,
when he took off for that touchdown, holy crap! I was surprised and impressed, and
that touchdown was a bit impressive, but also the touchdown to Noah Fant, he could have walked that in. Like, he did not have to throw it, and I almost wanted him just to run it in, just because it was so easy. But
he's on your fantasy team.
Yeah, but he was like, "Look, Fant, I need to get you something. You haven't gotten any touchdowns this year. The only tight end that hasn't really done anything. Here's your freebie. Don't drop it."
Yeah.
But I would say is everything about Geno in that game, the offensive, the scheme, the execution, all of it was so positive. I think that's so much to build on and put like that emphasis and trying to help pump up the players and say, like, this is not impossible. Look what you've done. Now, you don't play the Lions defense every week, so that's where, the facade starts to crumble. But it does instill, like, there are ways that you can get into it. Like, the thing that I found to be most impressive is we don't really use a third wide receiver anymore. It just goes to the tight end. We're relying on all three tight ends in a fashion that I can't recall before. Like,
no, never.
We've seen like tight ends be like the third or fourth option, but they're doing quarterback play action rollouts where it's obviously going to the tight end. Yeah. And the tight end is they're running like in parallel, and the defenders they don't know what to do. They don't know to stay with the tight end. They don't know to stay with Geno, and Geno's just throwing really, really accurate balls on the move. And
they're doing like one tight end on the left will do a 3-yard out, and it's Fant, so he's the one who gets the most attention. But then Disley and Parkinson will run 5 and 9 yard outs on the opposite side, and everybody's like assigned to take on tight ends. And all of a sudden, like they have a conundrum.
Right.
You don't have the people out there to cover tight ends. It's pretty beautiful. It's pretty cool to have 3 functional tight ends at the same time. I also, real quick, I know we got to move on, but I do want to do one more thing related to quarterbacks. I want to actually shout out Drew Lock, because every time I looked at the screen after a good play on Monday, Drew Lock is right there. He's not bitter. He's not whatever. He's the first person running over to congratulate Geno Smith on the 17-yard first-up pickup run. He was the first person in the end zone to congratulate on the TD run. And also on Penny, helping Penny out, even up in the end zone. Drew Lock, he's all over the place, encouraging people, talking to people, sitting down with Geno in between things and going over the thing. He's so active on that sideline, and it actually showed up to me.
Yeah, I recognize, and I saw that a lot, where Drew Lock was one of the first, if not the first person to congratulate not only Geno on all of those drives, but his teammates as well. So I think that speaks to him as a player and him as a person, understanding that he is the backup right now, but he's going to still do his part. So I think he deserves credit in that. But we are going to move ahead to a little bit more of a depressing topic. Topic number 2. Ross, is this defense worse than any past defense we've seen? Is this really Pete's defense?
It's clearly not Pete's defense in the classic sense. It's his defense in the sense that he felt also they needed to make some change, and he agreed with the new coordinator to let him do the new thing. So, it's his name, it's your name on the letterhead, you know what I mean? But it's not his classic. And I'm somewhat divided because we're only 4 games in. It's actually still early. It doesn't feel like it. I can't tell. I don't think it's the worst ever because, man, like we've had record-setting bad defenses last year and the year before as well, the first half of the year. Literally, like they were on the record to give up the most yards and points on pace for a while, but they improved. And I don't know. I can't figure it out. I went back when I watched the game trying to figure this out. Like, I can't figure out, is this just a horrifically planned defense with horrible scheme and horrible fit and whatever? Or is it growing pains? It's, we keep saying it's not even a true 3-4, but it's pretty close to it. It's a 3-4 most of the time. We haven't run a 3-4 we ran a 3-4 in 1985, 86, but since then. So I don't, it's players have to adjust, coaches have to adjust how they coach it. It takes usually a couple years to change over your personnel. You can't have 100% roster personnel and turnover, and you gotta. There's just a different way of doing things for everybody, and I can't tell. I really, honestly can't tell. Like, do they need to switch the scheme back a little bit again to get some efficiency there, or do you just have to suffer the growing pains? Like, and I honestly, I can't figure it out. I can't figure out, like, if 3, 4, 5 more games into this, the defense is going to start clicking, or if it was how I saw it on Monday and Tuesday was just like, you've just got the wrong people out there, man. You can't anchor a 3-4 line with a 260-pound defensive end. You got to run a guy who maybe used to be a defensive tackle out there at end, and you can't leave. I saw the world blowing up on Cody Barton. What? Cody Barton's doing the best he can, but I thought it was 255. He's more like he's 235. At 235, he can't shed a guard. He can't. The scheme and the players in front of him have to take up two blockers. You have to in a 3-4. Cody Barton's job is to get around as fast as possible those blocks and to take down the ball carrier. And he's doing okay. He's first and second in tackles every game. I mean, it's always going to be when you're the inside linebacker, but you can't blame Cody Barton for getting blown up by a guard. The guard should have never been on Cody Barton. You can't let the guards get to the second level.
My concern with Cody Barton is, I think your point of, like, positioning and location with the defense, I think that's very fair. But when he gets those tackle opportunities, he's just not doing it. That's like that Hawkinson run, that catch that went for 81 yards. He didn't try to tackle him. He tried to push him out of bounds, and for the most times, that's probably enough. But the tight end probably had, 20 pounds on him? And he just kind of, ran through his shove.
Sure, I get it. But on the other hand, if you've got an 81-yard play, there's not one guy to miss the play, right? If you're giving up 81-yard plays, you've got a few people out of position. So where's your safety if you've got 81 yards?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that's an excuse. I'm just saying people are really going after him, but it's not him. It's not one guy. And again, like I said last week, there's bad tackling. There's bad tackling all over the NFL. Do you know why? Because nobody practices tackling. You're not allowed to touch anybody. People are too expensive to risk getting hurt. They don't play in the preseason. Cody Barton didn't play in the preseason hardly. Nobody played. Brooks didn't play. Where's Brooks? You want to talk about who you should where there hasn't been one memorable play by Brooks in 1/4 of the season so far, and that's your number 2 whatever draft pick, right, last year or whatever. But where I don't feel right now I don't think it's the worst ever, but it's close. Players being put in the position to succeed. But I can't tell. Is this just necessary growing pains? Or is it forcing a scheme onto the wrong players? Is it coaching not knowing? Can Pete Carroll effectively coach a 3-4? Does he not know the scheme himself well enough to coach it? Is it all on a defensive coordinator who's a first-time coordinator, I believe? I don't know the answers. I have no answers at this point.
Okay. So, Zeb, is this defense worse than any past defense we've seen? So, I looked it up real quick. We have given up 115 points through 4 games. Last year, it was 109, and the year before was 110. So, points-wise, the wins were there in 2020. They were 4-0, and in 2021, they were also 2-2. Yardage-wise, the Seahawks are actually better. They're 117. And then the other tiers 1,900 and 1,800 versus the 1,700 yards they've given up. But obviously, this current team has given up the most points through 4 games in the past 3 years. And those have been some of our worst defensive, and especially since we've seen a whole year. Is this defense going to get better?
Well, I think that's the exact question, right? I think the reason why I think this defense right now is worse than the defense of the last couple of years is because 2020 and 2021, I believe that defense was going to get better as the season went on. And so far this year, and based on what we know, I think that's much less of a certainty. Obviously, it's possible, and I'm hoping, but we don't know. Things are so different right now than they have been that there's just not a lot to tell me or to convince me that that's going to happen again. And you know, everything Ross said is right. Like it's there's no way to kind of nail it down as to the one reason why it's like this or not. It's a whole bunch of stuff. New coordinator, new scheme, injuries, personnel in general. So it's I'm cautiously optimistic that this defense will slowly get better as the year goes on, but I'm definitely not convinced that this is the defense that's going to get better and be able to win games for us. I think there's a lot of work to do still.
I think for me, the way that I look at it is, just like I understand Geno's limitations, and while he had his best week ever, I don't expect that from him every week. The defense, I don't expect them to be this bad every week as it progresses, but I do expect them to be bad. And a lot of that has to do with, like, I think, you know, we have a lot of holes on our personnel. Like Ross said, you know, if you're going to run a 3-4 defense, you can't have one of your outside linebackers lose 30 to 60 pounds against the guys that they're going to go up against. You can't have your 230-pound inside linebacker go up against guards. There's just physics don't allow a guy like Cody Barton to win those kind of leverages. It's just almost physically impossible.
And by the way, just real quick, I mean, I used Bart as the example because he was the whipping boy this week, but I briefly mentioned Brooks. Brooks isn't getting off those, and again, he's also somebody you can't really expect to. I saw 3 plays in a row where the center and the guard were both blocking Brooks.
Right.
So, I mean, Woods is supposed to be our big guy up front, and he actually is doing pretty good, but on those plays, he wasn't. I mean, they felt comfortable he was being occupied by the left guard, and the right guard and the center were both able to get past him and were on Brooks.
Yeah.
Well, Brooks isn't going to make any plays for you if he's got 2 linemen on him.
Right, and that's the difficulty of trying to look at the defense and say, like, okay, well, who's messing up? Like,
it's so hard.
It is hard. And the way that I look at it from a positive standpoint is, there are certain elements of this defense that I think are positive, even though they are small. Like, Tariq Woolen's interception and return for a touchdown was a thing of beauty. And I don't think we've seen a young corner play that instinctively for a long time. You know, we're
so encouraged because also that's what we were told we were getting. We were told we were getting a defense that's not going to be reactive and it's going to sort of force actually go more for the turnover, go more aggressive, and he baited that in. So that was great.
It was the perfect, like, I'm going to trust my speed that you think you can beat me with, and my speed's still going to win out, and that's really what it was. He exploded past the receiver to get that interception. I also, even though Kobe Bryant hasn't had the best year playing nickel, he forced that really, really good fumble. Cam Chancellor even, like, gave him a shout out, I believe on Twitter, where he said, like, that's how you punch the ball out. So we are seeing guys get some opportunities in really poor overall, you know, defensive play. But those are highlights, and I think that's impressive to have. Those are things that are good to see. And that is, I think, what we should be looking towards, as opposed to just knowing that they're going to be bad and trying to think, like, all of a sudden people are going to get better. I think Tariq Woolen leads rookie corners in a bunch of defensive categories, in like the amount of yards he's given up, the number of targets he gets versus the catches that he's given up, and quarterback ratings against. So I think that's a positive, and I hope that we can build. And maybe we get healthy enough that we could see what our starting secondary was supposed to be like, minus Jamal Adams. So that's my hope.
The last thing I'll say on the defense is, this is going to sound stupid because I'm going to bring up fantasy football. Fantasy football has actually highlighted to me that there is hope for the Seahawks defense, and that's because I've actually kept them. Are you guys there? Did I just move?
Yeah, I'm here.
My screen went weird. I've actually kept on one of my teams. I've kept the Seahawks as my defense, and because although they're giving up tons of points, they are actually making key plays, a few key plays a game. They are getting a few sacks. They are getting a couple of interceptions. They've scored, I think, 2 touchdowns so far this year.
Yeah, they had the block kick for a touchdown and the pick 6.
Right, technically that's special teams, but it's
It
the
counts
defensive
as,
side of the special
the
teams.
defense for fantasy.
Yeah, but so like they're making the points. They're making enough key plays here and there. So if you clean up the tackling then, and if you learn your responsibilities a little better, if those lighter guys learn a little bit more, some of it's just, we've taken Taylor. Taylor's another guy who's been a whipping boy, and maybe deservedly so because we expected more sacks. But the thing is, though, in the 3-4, he shouldn't be necessarily getting the sacks. He should be taking a blockers, and that's not what he's had to do up to now. And so he's got to learn how to do that. The rookies almost have the advantage because from the beginning, that's what they're going to be told to do. Whereas Taylor for 2 years was just like, get to the quarterback, get to the quarterback, get to the quarterback.
Right.
Now you're like, get to the line of scrimmage, don't go any further, and draw the attention of the tackle, if you can, the guard or the tight end. And that's different. That's a different mentality. It's a different way to play. It's a different set of responsibilities. It's not instinctive for them yet. So maybe as the season goes on, that becomes more of a thing for them. And so maybe that clears up Brooks. And maybe all of a sudden Brooks starts to make a few big plays again. And so I think there's hope.
All right. I can live with hope. I'm happy to bank on hope, especially this year.
A new hope.
Rebellions are built on hope.
I love it.
They are.
I love it. All right, let's move ahead. We are going to topic number 3. This is the Hawks Cast Corner. Zeb, through 4 weeks, who is winning the trade, Russ or Pete? Both teams are 2-2. Russ has not won a AFC Offensive Player of the Week. He had his first productive game, like collectively, from a statistical or fantasy standpoint. I want to just acknowledge that I benched Russell Wilson last week in favor of Geno Smith in my dynasty league, and that helped me barely win, and that's enough for me.
Can one of you guys remind me who is playing for us right now that we drafted with the picks we got from Denver?
So Shelby Harris,
right, Shelby and Noah.
We got Charles Cross. I think our second round pick would have been. It depends on which. I think it would have been Kenneth Walker was the earlier pick. So because we got their pick was in front of ours, so we got Kenneth Walker was the pick that we got from them.
Okay, so I think right now we're winning the trade. But I think more than that, so far Denver is losing the trade because they were supposed to be a quarterback away, and this was going to put them over the top and make them a Super Bowl contender. And so far they look absolutely nothing like a team that's going to be competing come January. So there's a lot that can still happen. We're going to be looking at how this trade, who won this trade, probably 2, 3, 4 years down the line. As of right now, though, I think it's pretty obvious to me, at least, that we have the edge.
if you were to look at one category and say, this is why Seattle is winning this trade, this is why Pete's winning this trade versus this is why Russ is winning the trade, is there a stat, is there a category, is there a metric that you would apply? Would you use wins? Would you use offensive production? Would you use something to show that there was a clear winner?
That's too simple. I think we're winning because we have pieces that we acquired from this trade that are prospects for the future, where Denver has Russ, and that's it. And if that doesn't pan out, they lose. So I think just based on the just the fact that it looks like we have guys that are going to develop into, starting quality players, guys who really can contribute to us. And if Russ keeps playing how Russ is playing, then they're not any better off than they were without him.
Ross, what about you? Through 4 weeks, teams have equal records. They're winning in different ways. Seattle has the win over Denver. The draft, the Tankathon has the Seahawks and the Denver. If they have back-to-back picks, so there's not a clear winner there. But who is winning this trade through 4 weeks?
If you're thinking Broncos or Seahawks, the Seahawks are clear winners because our quarterback play hasn't actually had a drop off. Like Zeb said, got all this new talent, and even like people like you might say like Fant hasn't made like a huge impact, but he has because he's enabled to, Disley's not, a Jimmy Graham, but because Fant is out there, he's got 3 touchdowns in 4 games because you can't cover every tight end. So if you're looking at Broncos and Seahawks, for everything Zeb said and more, like clearly the Seahawks have won the trade. If the conversation is as actually as you wrote it here, who's winning this trade, Russ or Pete? The answer is completely different. If I have to say who's winning the trade, Russ or Pete, I'll say they both lost because Russ is having his worst year ever. And we're 2-2 with the worst defense ever, and we're talking about how great Geno's played because we're so surprised. But let's be honest, if Russ was still on our team and happy to be on our team, we're 3-1 right now, and maybe 4-0. So we're both worse off. Russ is worse off. Pete's worse off. The fans are worse off. Because they couldn't find a way to make it work, and I put that on Pete. Yes.
You think we're potentially undefeated just by having Russell instead of Geno?
Yeah, potentially. Not for sure, but I think that if Russ is a happy Russ and is on our team, and we need 1 scoring drive out of 4 drives that last game, we score. Yeah, I believe so. And the other game is a tough one.
Are you saying that if we had Russell Wilson on the team, we wouldn't have DJ Dallas throwing the ball in the red zone?
I mean, Geno Smith on the team, why we haven't DJ Dallas throw it? Yeah, I'm saying we're 3-1 right now with Russ. Yeah, I'm saying. I'm not taking any away from Geno Smith. Geno is who Geno is. You don't get mad at a cat for being a cat. And Russ, we probably traded him at exactly the right time because probably we got rid of him just as he's going to fade. But I believe there's 1 year left in that dude at least. And I believe, again, I'm not saying the trade was a bad idea because I'm saying a happy Russ every time, right? Russ wasn't happy. Russ didn't want to be here. Pete couldn't find a way to get through to him. But going back to Mr. Miyagi, man, there's no bad students. There's bad teachers. Pete isn't a bad teacher, but this was his biggest challenge to find a way to reach Russ, to find a way to teach Russ some self-awareness.
I have such a hard time with that because it's not that I disagree with you. I just feel that there's so many elements that are outside of Pete's control that no matter
I get it.
No matter how much he is trying to be supportive of Russell Wilson, Russ just doesn't want to hear it. It's like Russ. Russ rebelled. It's like Russ is a teenager, and that in a football
Yes.
sense is what happened. He was listening to
Yes.
the wrong people as opposed to someone who truly wanted him to succeed. Russ didn't think, well,
Yes.
that's not going to help me succeed because that's not what I want. All my friends are saying I should do this, and I don't believe you because my friends give me what I need, give me what I want, and you're trying to limit me.
I get it. I 100% get it. And at the end of the day, you're probably right. But if I allow myself a little bit of detachment from reality, maybe, or maybe just a little bit of optimism, or a little bit of whatever, I want to believe that even now, there is somebody and there's a way that somebody could reach Russ.
So I get here's my reset of the question is. This is and again, I'm summarizing a little bit, but you saying this is a failure on Pete because he couldn't reach Russ. It's not because Russ doesn't.
I don't like Pete. It's a challenge. It was a hard thing.
Right. All right. And I think that's something most of us can agree on. I think for me, clearly, Seattle, especially with how Seattle has played, even though they've been shut out on the road. They lost a game where they just couldn't get enough offense, and then we're coming off this like huge offensive, blowout, but our defense looks like garbage. I still think that there's so many more positives that we've received out of the trade. We have a lot of cap space. We got a bunch of draft capital. We got 3 players that are all going to be, potential impacts. Even Drew Lock on the bench, I feel is like an impact to the team. It's not an impact player,
Right.
but it's an impact to the team.
You wrote. The question you wrote is not did the Seahawks win. That's a different question.
But I think Pete won because Pete is able to show that his culture is still number one. His culture, his desire, his idea and philosophy of win forever, we are seeing that. Yeah, we're struggling because we won one, we lost 2, and we won 1. And I don't expect all of a sudden like Geno's going to lead us to like a 14-3 season. Like that's not what I'm expecting. I still think we're a 6 to 9-ish team. And
let me put like my opinion last rephrase, and then I'll shut up about it. In 10 years from now, when Russ looks back and when Pete looks back, I think they're both going to say we should have kept the team together.
I think Pete will say that. Sense, I don't think Russ will.
I think you will. After what happens if Denver plays out the way I think it's going to play out, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Russ is already going like, what? I mean, he's got the lowest quarterback grade he's ever had. He's been booed in his home stadium twice.
He's been booed 4 times, twice on the road and twice at home. That is terrible.
And you don't think that's... Sorry?
That's gotta hurt for him.
I was going to say, for Russ, that hurts. So, I mean, yeah, I think in 10 years, that when Russ is a little more mature, when he's gotten to a different phase in his life, I think he's going to go back and go, the goal was championships. And I misread that situation. I think so.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I mean, so here's the crazy thing. As bad as Russ is playing, his quarterback rating is 91.1. And again, quarterback rating is not the be-all, end-all stat.
91.1 is not that good in the NFL anymore.
It's not good in the current NFL. But his quarterback rating his career quarterback rating in Seattle is 101.8. So he's playing 10 points worse in a quarterback rating than his career average. Like you talk about what does the back of your baseball card say? And if you're doing less than that, then that's a problem. And that's what's happening with Russ. 3-4 weeks just to confine myself to the question as originally asked. Pete is winning this trade because it is all about his philosophy. It's all about his approach to the game, and we're seeing that. If you look at how Russ wants to win a game, it's not succeeding. He's not playing well enough to overcome his deficiencies. I mean, this is the Broncos for this supposed high-powered offense that Russ has said, oh, I'm so tired of having to carry a bad team, they've scored 16 points, 11 points, and 23 points. So they've only gone over 20 points once in 3 games. They've gone and won 2 of their games 16-9 and 11-10. This is not a team that I'm inspired by. If I'm a Broncos fan, I am wholly upset. I am beyond livid based upon the draft capital that Russ cost to acquire, the contract that he signed that looks totally unjustified, especially since he had did he have 2 years left on his deal or just 1 year left?
Yep, he has 2 years left.
He had 2 years left on his deal and he signed for $50 million, 45 or whatever it was. If I'm a Broncos fan, I'm thinking I got fleeced. I'm thinking that, wow, we are going to be saddled with a guy that can't even break,
That contract is also just there's nothing you could do with it.
And they're stuck with him for at least 5 years, I think. It's based upon the way that the contracts are worth. It's 3 years of it are guaranteed, and then the next year or two after is where the dead money really protects the player. But
yep.
I think on that alone, the fact that Russ is not 4-0, that he's not the front runner for MVP like a lot of people thought he would be, he thought he would be, that alone proved that this was a bad trade. He bet on the wrong guy. He was not ready for this. And also, what happens when you have a bad coach. Nathaniel Hackett looks totally overwhelmed by being a head coach in the NFL right now. He is, and that's the other thing that's added to it. Everyone is slow to blame Russ for the Broncos' deficiencies. The coach is obviously an easy target, and that's going to protect Russ for a little bit. But if they make a change at quarterback or head coach next year or 2 years from now, and they're still going to run into these same issues, it's just going to make it so hard for him. And I don't know how he bounces back unless he starts to buy and understand his actual limitations, which I think is something he is struggling with right now.
He probably needs to drink some of that nano bubble water.
He needs all the nano bubbles.
Oh, yeah.
Final thoughts on this before we move ahead.
Looking good from our perspective, as far as I'm concerned.
I still contend that we got an amazing trade even before we spent the draft capital.
If it ends up that Russ really is kind of done, John Schneider probably should get GM of the year again. I mean, he never got it before; they never gave it to him. But to have the courage to get rid of a franchise quarterback, which has only been done one other time up to now in the really modern times, and
I don't even know if there's anything that's comparable to a situation, because the closest is letting your super old quarterback leave, which is Tom Brady, or let your quarterback who doesn't have a neck and and you got the number 1 pick to grab the golden boy. I don't know if I would consider those situations same. I don't know if there's a comparable situation of Seattle trading away a quarterback like what we just saw.
And we got a haul. I mean, if it ends up being we got rid of the guy at the exact right time, we got rid of the mobile quarterback who was no longer mobile and hadn't adjusted, and we got serviceable players, starting players, and 2 seconds and 2 firsts. I mean, if we get to the end of the year and Russ is still at 90 rating and thrown 20 touchdowns, how do we not get John Schneider the manager, GM of the year?
Yeah, and if Charles Cross ends up being a quality potential Pro Bowl level left tackle, I don't know how that is anything but a huge win.
All right.
All right, let's move on to topic number 4, the New Orleans Saints. Ross, can the Seahawks take advantage of the Saints quarterback controversy? Are you a Jameis Winston fan or an Andy Dalton fan?
I used to be pretty neutral, but then last week I was watching, and Andy Dalton, A, looked, decent, and B, he's adopted largely the Fitzpatrick look, which blew me away. And now I'm a Team Dalton guy. Anybody who's like willing to just go all in on Ryan Fitzpatrick's look. I mean, maybe he's just doing it. Maybe he's planning to go as Ryan Fitzpatrick for Halloween this month. I don't know, but did you see him?
I have not seen Andy Dalton. I have not opened myself to that world yet.
Really? Like, because he used to be like really fresh faced and everything, and clean shaven and whatever.
Is he? He's all grizzled now.
Now he looks like a reincarnation of Ryan Fitzpatrick.
I see the photo that pops up. He's got his beard, but
is it the full?
Yeah, it's a full beard. He kind of looks like an evil villain, more so than
he looks
anything
like
else.
Spock.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a different look from what I remember him. I don't know if the beard necessarily like makes that big of a difference. I also see that he had the beard when he was in Chicago, so the beard's not 100% new look for him, just because he's with the Saints.
It's getting there, man.
Yeah. So,
but I really was impressed actually with some of his throws and some of his game management last week. So, I mean, they say if you have two quarterbacks, you have none, but that's not really always true. Like if you've got two lower tier starters, there's probably not really much of a difference. Their style of play is different, but I don't really fear either one.
Right.
So, whatever they want to do.
Do you think it has no impact in the game?
Not no impact. I mean, like I said, like they're better at different things, but the net effect is pretty much the same. They're about the same level. Like if they were in Madden, they're probably both about a 75 or whatever. There's different ways of getting to the 75.
Right.
Dalton is more accurate. Winston's got better arm. Yeah.
I mean, Andy Dalton is a 12-year veteran in the NFL.
Man, that time just flies by.
He has started 6 games or more his entire career, and he's been a backup for his last 3 years. So obviously he hasn't played enough games to get to that 6 starts, but that's a lot of games this man has played.
Yep. They're both. They're in that sense, the Saints are in good situation. Not many teams have two experienced quarterbacks who have both recently started a lot of games. So in that case, they're kind of in good shape. On the other hand, again, maybe it does lead you back to the whole if you've got two quarterbacks, you don't have one.
Right.
You might have been better off spending all the money on one guy who's better. I don't know, but I was kind of a believer in the Winston reclamation project, but we'll see.
Zeb, what about you? Do you look at these quarterbacks and say, okay, this is essentially the Seattle version of Drew Lock, Geno Smith?
I think it's a couple of guys who have had a lot more success than Geno Smith and Drew Lock. But they've also thrown a lot of interceptions. So it's I think I don't know that we can take any advantage of the fact that there's a competition, but I think either one of those guys is susceptible to turnovers, and I don't think our defense is not good, as we've said, but I think they can create turnovers. So they may not be able to tackle or cover their receivers at all, but I think they can create some turnovers. So in that sense, I think we do have a chance here to take advantage of these guys who are kind of mistake prone.
I mean, I'm just looking at the stats. And obviously stats don't tell the whole story, but if Seattle does not play well, just even offensively and defensively, I think that will be a really, really sad affair because realistically, the Saints should be they should be 0-4. They had a miracle comeback against the Falcons in week 1 to win 27-26. They lost to the Bucks, they lost to the Panthers, and they lost to the Vikings when they also in the Vikings game had a lead and couldn't hold it. So, and I just don't know if having an Andy Dalton or if having a James Winston really makes an impact, just because this is another example of two bad teams and it's a race to the bottom. And I feel as if the Saints, they have a lot of injuries. They had their practice squad, like long-term running back Latavius Murray, poached off their practice squad because the Broncos had a major injury at running back. I don't think they have a great head coach. I actually don't even know who their head coach is right now. Who is their head coach? Dennis Allen. I don't know who Dennis Allen is. Do you guys know who their head coach is? Looks like he was the defensive coordinator in New Orleans. And apparently he was a head coach at some point too. Oh, that's crazy.
The Raiders. He was with the Raiders for a while.
How is this guy weird? Okay, anyway. I'm not saying that automatically this means Seattle's going to win. I think it's going to be a close game like every one of our games. It's going to come down to who can make that vital play. I think it's going to play out almost exactly like the Falcons game. That's my expectation. I don't think that Jameis Winston or Andy Dalton are going to make a huge impact on this game, but that also means that I don't think Seahawks are good enough to take advantage of that as well.
I mean, yeah, I think that makes sense. Hopefully we can take some advantage, but there's definitely no guarantee the way things have been so far.
If there was one thing you hope that we could carry over from this Detroit Lions game into the Saints game, what is it that you would want the Seahawks to be able to carry over?
The running game.
The running game?
Running game and the efficiency.
Yeah. I almost want to focus on just like the offensive line as like the thing, because I think that does lead to the running game and that leads to just better protection. I think if that's what we could do, then that kind of gives us a lot of opportunity. But yeah, I think the running game, it just takes pressure off of the defense. It takes pressure off of the offense because one, it uses more clock. That's more rest for your defense. If you can run well, even getting 2 and 3 yards just makes it so that the second or third down is just that much easier. So I hope that's what we can do. So we'll see. Final thoughts on the Saints.
Their coach's dad was a football player. I always like those stories.
Is that the only reason why he's coaching right now?
No, I mean he climbed the ladder. He's not like nothing was handed to him. He worked for it. Like he started as a graduate assistant at a university program and just worked his butt off. I'm sure you remember him. He was like it's such a generic name, but he was the coach of the Raiders for like 3 years or something.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for our topics. Let's get to some predictions. So, Ross, as always, we want to know what is the final score? Seahawks at Saints.
27-24 Seahawks.
Is that the Falcons game?
Something like that.
I think that was going to go with that score. Zeb, what's the final score? Seahawks at Saints.
Seahawks 31, Saints 23.
Okay. I'm going to go 30-27. I think the Saints pull it out because it's a home game for them, but they don't cover.
Good. Yeah, we need you to pick against us. I think that works.
I'm all about that as a ploy. Ross, over under 1.5 defensive 3-and-outs forced. I think we had 2 in that Detroit game, but we end up muffing a punt on the usually sure-handed Tyler Lockett, which they scored off of. But 1.5 defensive 3-and-outs forced. Over under.
I mean, last game we had 2, but neither of them counted because they went for it on 4 that made it. So, or the one we off the punt. Things. What would come around? Over.
Over. Zeb, 1.5 defensive 3-and-outs forced. Over under.
I'll say over, and if that's the way it goes, that's some improvement, right?
I think it's kind of funny that we forced 2 of them, and on the 2 occasions we muffed the punt, and then, like Ross said, they go for it on 4th down and they convert. So
they're the highest scoring team in the league right now. So
yeah, I don't trust our defense enough to think that they can force more than 2, so I'm going to go with the under. Ross, over under 29.5 minutes time of possession. Over under.
Over. We're going to be able to run the ball. So
okay.
Over. That's our game now. That's how we win. We got to be over.
I think if I would. I'm not 100% confident. I am impressed with Geno. I'm impressed with Shane Waldron. I'm impressed with Penny, but it's been 1 game. I'm going to say under. I don't know if our defense is going to be good enough to help us out still. Sorry. Over under 27.5 rushing attempts. If you take out Geno's rushes, even though some of them were designed, I think they had like 28. So 27.5 rushing attempts. Over under, Ross.
Just under.
Just under? Zab, what about you?
I'll go over.
I think over is required in order for us to win and be really competitive, but until we make that a focal point, I'm going to go under. The final prediction of the night, Ross, over under 9.5 penalties. For whatever reason, after that Broncos game, Seattle has been a penalty-seeking machine. We're getting yellow flags all over the place. 9.5 over under.
Over. That's the price of playing the rookies.
Do we have? Do we know who's officiating?
I'm sure we can find out. I don't know their history though, so we're just gonna roll the dice.
Okay. Well, yeah, probably over, especially if it's Cleet Blakeman. That's not true. That's unfair.
It's always a bad thing when you can remember a referee's name, just because that's not anything any of us should ever have to know. But
you don't remember Bill Vinovich?
I mean, the only refs that I remember are Bill Levy and Ed Hockley, but for 2 very different reasons.
That's fair.
I'm going to say over as well until this team can prove itself. I don't think we should trust them, and I'm okay with some of the defensive penalties from the rookies because the hope is they get sneakier at it, because that's what we all want. And gentlemen, exactly. Those are our predictions for the evening. That is our podcast for the evening. Final comments before we get to some shout-outs.
I think we covered it.
All right.
I'm having fun so far. That's what I was hoping for was a fun season that I didn't expect a lot of success in. So far,
if we flip-flop games like Atlanta and Detroit win on the loss in that manner, I think it will be a really, really fun season.
Yep.
All right, time for some shout-outs, gentlemen.
Shout out to all those people probably setting up the Spirit Halloween shops all over America and ex-Target shops. And
the old Lamont building.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a lot of hard work setting up cool stuff.
Shout out to everybody, everywhere, ever.
That's a big shout out. So I'd like to
except for that one guy.
Well, yeah, fuck him.
He knows who he is. Shout out to Ross and to Zeb for being great people on the podcast. We are the Hawkscast.net podcast. You can check us out on our website. Check us out on Twitter at Seahawks Podcast or Seahawks Forum. We're on Apple. We're on Spotify. We're anywhere you can find a podcast. We're on there. We're on YouTube. We're excited for this game. It's a 10 a.m. game, so set your clocks. And we wish you all a Go Hawks.
Go Hawks, let's soar. Let's fly. Seahawks country.